I Am Stan is the new graphic novel by Tom Scioli about the life of Stan Lee. And Stan Lee, in my opinion, is a hard person to write about because there's a lot of stories. It's sort of like when you see these wrestling podcasts and somebody tells you, oh, what happened this day? And you have 5 different wrestlers and you get 5 different stories, like a Rashomon thing. So I was curious to read how Tom presented this. And I have to say just in advance that Tom did a really good job, a really great job actually, of being nuanced, of being balanced, not trying to shift the reader one way or another, presenting both sides of Stan Lee, which is something I'm going to get into. The book starts off like with a cold open. Stan Lee's, this is probably not all that long before he dies at a signing. And you know, his fans are happy to see him, and the handler says Stan Lee. And then he's having to spell out the letters S-T-A-N-L-E-E because he's so old that it's hard for him just to do that. And then you see this close-up of Stan's face, and he just looks beaten down and tired. And then in the reflection, you see the fans, and it's a little bit like a funhouse mirror, kind of distorted, and then it just fades. The beginning of the book shows Stan in what's that old TV show, that old game show, What's My Line? He's rocking that shaggy hair and that beard. You know, some moments of his past. I love this one sequence that Tom does. He does an Andy Warhol homage, but you have Stan as he looked like in the early 60s, then with a little bit more hair, then a more full toupee and a beard, more hair on the toupee and a beard, and then more hair. And then over time, less hair, the mustache, which he kept, and then the receding hairline, and then the white hair. Just thought it was a nice visual representation of how he looked through the ages. First 50 pages deals with Stan as a young boy and young man. He's a precocious child, very intelligent. He's his mom's favorite. And nothing's ever really... You know, you can tell they didn't have it easy growing up. I think they had financial problems. Nothing's ever stated specifically, but a lot of stuff is intimated. You can tell his parents don't get along. The mom is always on his dad's case. I think she considers him just like a lazy guy. And then after about 50 pages, you know, Stan is the editor. And this is in the early 50s, before the public uproar over comic books that almost killed the industry. And Stan starts doing things over time to kind of like exert his control. And you'll see that he does these things. Sometimes I think he just does these things just to kind of like a power trip. Like, for instance, he tells the bullpen, hey, I put a camera in here, so I have my eyes on you. And then the next page, he's keeping an eye on them, and he brings in this artist, and he says, look, I saw you reading the daily news while everybody else was working. You're fired. Then the next page, this artist comes in and says, hey, we talked about me getting my art back. And so Stan just says, oh, wait a minute. He types something, makes the guy wait, puffs on his pipe. And then he's like, oh, yeah, here, that's right. And then he just puts a big X on the art before he gives it to him. And there's no reason to do this because it's not going to impact comic sales. He's devalued the art. And it's just a power dick move. And you'll see he does these kinds of things. I'm just not going to go through the whole book and talk about everything here. There is a lot here. It deals with, you know, how they responded to the industry almost going out of business and how they kind of saved themselves with Fantastic Four. A few sequences I kind of wanted to promote is one blind lawyer, this section, because Stan Lee gets Bill Everett to do the art for Daredevil, but he doesn't like his style. It's too old-fashioned. He's used to the Stan Lee and also Steve Ditko style of having a lot of action in their art. So he brings in Wally Wood. And there's this point where, and he also brings in John Romita after Steve Ditko quits to draw Spider-Man. And Romita's like, listen, I want to do design work. I don't want to do any more comics. And he's like, just for a short period of time. And there's this little interaction with Wally Wood and Stan Lee where Wally is saying, hey, listen, I created most of the story. Why can I not be credited as writer? And they have a falling out. So then he gets John Romita to draw these books. But John is having a hard time adapting to the Marvel style of art. He's used to doing comics the way they did them in the 50s. So Jack Kirby comes in and goes, hey, let me show you. This is what I would do. And it just subtly also just reinforces how important Jack was to Marvel, because John Romita is like trying to figure out, hey, how do I do comics the way Stan's looking for him? And Jack is like, oh, you do it like this. It's basically, without saying it, Stan is saying, I want you to do it the way Jack Kirby did it. You know, which is kind of infuriating, because you know how Jack Kirby got jerked around by Marvel for so many years, and Stan didn't help with that. You know, this is when he decides that he's going to start wearing a toupee to appeal to younger readers. There's a lot of scenes from his life where, you know, just weird little kind of odd instances. Like, for instance, I guess they're on vacation, and his wife is mad because all he wants to do is work. And she goes, you love us more than me. He smashes his typewriter. And Stan goes, where do you think all those fur coats and jewelry come from? So they're living well. She's got jewelry. She's got fur coats. But, you know, historically, they've always tried to, like, make it difficult for the artist to be financially successful. And 2 pages later, he's speaking somewhere, and he says, why would you want to get into the comic book business? And he says, because even if you succeed, if you reach the pinnacle of success of comics, you'll be less successful, less secure than you were as just an average practitioner of your art and television, radio, movies, or what have you. So he's telling these guys, you know, why would you want to get in comics? Because, you know, you're not going to make as much money. But then he's got his wife wearing jewelry and fur coats. You know, I mean, then, you know, they show various instances with him and Martin Goodman. Martin Goodman is legitimately rich. There's this one interesting scene where someone creates the pilot for this Japanese Spider-Man show, which I love. And years ago, we went to a con, and Chris bought a DVD, a high-quality bootleg DVD of the series. I've seen the series. I love it. So all these guys are looking at it saying, this is terrible. Stan's like, I love it. I want to look more into this Japanese stuff. So, and the reason I mention this, plants to see, because later on, he meets with these TV executives, and he says, look, there's this hit show in Japan called Power Rangers. We'll just copy the same action sequences. We'll dub the voices of the characters when they're, you know, when they're fighting, and then we'll just get American actors to portray the characters when, you know, they're not in costume. And these guys are like, this is terrible, it's violent, and it's stupid. We'll be laughed out of the business. So, you know, Stan had the vision to see the potential this thing had, and these guys didn't. And it's just kind of ironic. Because, you know, Stan was always a seller and a kind of a hustler. And just to talk about the book, again, there's these horizontal panels, this back and forth. Like I said, it's almost like you're watching a film. Like a widescreen movie, as opposed to just reading a comic. And then it goes into the 70s, and then in the 80s, where Stan is losing more and more of his power. He's trying to do these ventures, Stan Lee Enterprises. There's this one scene where he has an interview with Howard Stern, and I actually remember listening to this, and Howard just keeps asking him, well, why aren't you getting a percentage? Like, what are you doing? Like, why aren't you getting a percentage of the profits? Like, didn't you do all this stuff? And Stan is like trying to like not answer the question or kind of redirect him to his new ventures. And I remember this episode because, you know, because Howard wasn't being mean, but he was just being blunt, like saying that Stan should have gotten more out of it for what he created. And the book goes on and on. And as you can see, he's older. They show a little bit of his daughter. Issues with his daughter are well documented. He's older. His wife passes away. The legal battles, people claiming ownership of his likeness. He says he never signed anything. And this is where you get in that murky ground where, did he really sign things and then he realized it was a bad deal? Or did he just say, yeah, I signed it, got the money, and then just said, I never signed anything? Or, you know, you can research it. There's a lot of he said, she said, a lot of lawsuits, a lot of denials. And so at the end, we really don't know what really happened. This presents enough, but it doesn't make a judgment one way or another saying this is what happened. This is just based on excerpts and little bits that are documented. And the book, that's about it. I mean, it doesn't make you a Stan fan. It doesn't make you hate Stan either. Although, as I said, it shows the two sides of him. So I think as a biography, I think it's a success, excuse me. I think it's a pretty good book. It's different in approach and style than the Jack Kirby book that Tom did 3 years ago. And I think it's a good read. I mean, we're talking about a lot of, there's a lot of graphic novels that have come out recently, a lot more coming out next month or two, but don't let this one pass you by. I believe it's available in hardcover and paperback, trade paperback. It's a good book. It's a good read. I think Tom skirted that razor's edge that would be that anybody that writes about Stan Lee would have if they're trying to be balanced and they're trying to be factual. The bibliography is very detailed. Tom's a professional, so I know that he was striving to present something, and I think a lot of the cases, like a lot of biographies, you kind of have to make your own conclusions. So I enjoyed this a lot. Hope you get a chance to pick this up and read it. And if you do, let me know what you think. A great graphic novel. Thanks.